Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another Journey on the Fly podcast. Tonight, I have a special, talented guest, Mr. Ryan Keene. Some of you may have seen his artwork. Some of you may have it hanging on your wall or sticking on your vehicle. If you don't, after tonight, you're going to want to go get it. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to get into this conversation. Remember, we are a full-service guide and instructional fly fishing organization, and we would love to meet you on the stream and help you increase or begin your journey in fly fishing. www.journeyonthefly.fish. All right, let's not wait any longer. Let's get into this conversation. Mr. Keene, give us some background information. Kind of tell us who you are a little bit. And any of this, you can share as much or as little as you want. Just be very comfortable with that. We don't really have any restrictions as far as how far somebody wants to go to answer any kind of a question. So give us a little background information on you. Where are you from? Where were you raised? Do you have a family? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So my name is Ryan Keene. Grew up in central Massachusetts in a little town called Gardner. And split a lot of time in also southern coastal Maine, Wells, Kennebunk area, grandparents up there. And we spent most of our summers up in there, which is my mom still lives up in that area now. But yeah, I pretty much grew up in Gardner, Mass, up until, high school when I moved away to college. Went to school at UMass Amherst for painting, printmaking, and a minor in art history. And that's when I finally kind of left the area and moved to Pennsylvania. I went to grad school at IUP, which is Indiana University of Pennsylvania, for sculpture and art history and printmaking. I don't like to repeat degrees. I guess I just wanted to kind of have an overall spectrum of along. But that's kind of like my education background. Gardner was a great place for a kid. Everything was kind of walking distance. We had that kind of quintessential neighborhood feel. There's a lot of kids in my neighborhood. And there was woods in my backyard, and there was a fishing pond, about a quarter of a mile away. So, I was kind of when the street lights went off, I maybe went home at that time, and I was out of the house before the sun came up. But outdoors was definitely my place. And my dad was a fly fisherman and a fly tyer. So camping and fishing was always in our life. And my mom, she had gone to school for art, though ended up doing computers in the early days and just kind of followed that up into her career. So I kind of had those both sides, They got divorced when I was pretty young, but I do have a lot of memories of kind of having our outdoor activities split between fishing, and then after lunch we'd draw trees under the shade of a willow tree or something.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of always there. When I ended up going to school, fishing kind of took a little bit of a side, a little bit more of a side space than it had been up to then. Just because I got really immersed into, life as an art student, which was, 80 hours in the studio, along with all your classes. But I still got out a little bit in that area. There's some amazing fishing places in that area, like the Deer River and stuff like that. So, it was always that kind of personal escape, though. I never had fishing buddies in college. It was just kind of me going off and needing to find that space for myself. It's always been a place of contemplation and a place of peace. Of all the hardships in life, I've never never had trauma and never had hardships in on the river. So it was kind of where I always, mentally kind of found my place. Um, and in Maine, my grandfather had a boat, so we were always deep sea fishing for cod and surface fishing for stripers and fishing off of jetties and off the rocks in the front. They had well, still do. It's in the family. It's a cottage right on a rocks in Wells, Maine.
Oh wow.
And my biggest striper was actually just right off the rocks in front of the cottage. And just one of those things. Like, I don't know, I'll throw a line out, on a simple popper. But I love those times. I love the random events. And I remember one time going to the jetty. The first day we were kind of up there for vacation. We were just going to walk on the beach, and it was right after, I can't remember, I think it was Hurricane Grace maybe in the 90s. And the water was boiling with pogies, this bait fish, boiling in the all of the shore was just covered with dead pogies because they had been chased off the shore by schools and schools of bluefish.
Oh wow.
And people were just hauling in bluefish. Those kids with like Spider-Man reels, push button reels, breaking in half, and their dad's trying to pull up these, 15-pound bluefish. And it was another one of those, and it was like the old salty guys on the tip of the jetty, kind of just shaking their heads and smiling, kind of watching all these people just kind of rushing out and finding surf reels, and it was and not realizing that bluefish have teeth, and it's just I just love those little kind of events more than just a constant casual fishing of my life. I've always loved stories, and so those little narratives really kind of place themselves in my head pretty solidly.
And that's important too, right? I mean, to have those stories. I mean, our lives are stories, and we communicate. Most cultures, all cultures, as far as I understand, communicate in stories, and it's important. That's probably my biggest personal, like, private fear is losing my memory.
Oh yeah,
because you in high school you used to ask silly questions of each other, and I remember if you had to lose one of your senses, which one it would be, and I still couldn't come up with an answer today because I can think of so many good reasons to keep each one.
Yeah.
But the memory, if I had to lose them all, I would hope that my memory would stay because of all those awesome stories. And and those are fantastic stories you're already sharing. I mean, I'm following right along with you as if I was there.
Yeah, memory is a big thing in my life. It feels like most of I do a lot of writing as well, and with my art and memories, I am always referring to the past. I don't really write, and as far as I think of the kind of the fishing world of my art is always about those past narratives and memories of those times on the rivers and getting stranded on a backpacking adventure with my dad and having to catch fish to eat because we didn't have anything else. It's like all these little things just really, like, I think I could paint 1,000 pictures of a brook trout based on that little adventure, just because everything about that was just so clear and vibrant. My mom is dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia right now, and so also, like, I hear what you're saying about the idea of memories, and I find myself kind of really getting deep into the past, really trying to, like, refresh all those memories for myself, because I feel like it's you're like the last like the last hold for some of those memories with her.
Yeah.
I lost my brother like 20 somewhat years ago as well, and so again, like, it's that always feel like I'm trying to preserve memories of the people that aren't here anymore. It can get overwhelming.
Yeah,
um, but at the same time, it just feels like it's what you're supposed to do, you know?
absolutely. And I'm sorry that you guys are your mom's dealing with that. I know none of that is easy.
No, and I'm 600 miles away, so it's really hard. You don't get the kind of the casual decline. You just kind of are surprised by it sometimes, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
So did your mom, speaking of your mom, you said she
Yeah.
did art stuff occasionally.
Yeah.
But is she part and parcel of kind of your inspiration to move that direction? Because you took it serious. Like most people, well, I wouldn't say most people, a number of people kind of accidentally fall into things, but you have, a background in these things, which I really appreciate. Um,
It's funny. When I began school for art, I was all about the change. You know, I was really into abstract art. I didn't want to paint realistic. I just wanted to, for my portfolio to get into school, it was me standing in my backyard in Gardner in the woods with a canvas stapled to a tree and throwing house paint at it. I was, Jackson Pollock. I was, all these kind of huge inspirations for me. And so when I started, I was rejecting a lot of that stuff, which I look back at now and I regret because I wish becoming more, having more representational aspects of my art. I wish I had more training with some of the amazing professors that I just kind of like just got my assignments done instead of really truly absorbing what they had. Um, but all my undergrad, I was very abstract. I was making these 300-pound paintings that were made up of weird things we found at the medical the medical buildings, and it was definitely on the more kind of abstract 60s collage, Robert Rauschenberg kind of craziness. And by the time I ended my undergrad, I was pretty much doing large scale sculpture and installation art. You know,
hmm.
I was filling entire rooms with sound works and the things that a lot of people roll their eyes about, being like, "Oh, right, art, yeah." Um, you know, I was the banana, duct taped to the wall. I would have loved that so much when I was in my 20s. And same thing when I went to grad school. A lot of my art focused on some trauma I went through when I was, a young kid, and it was this kind of, these self-help things. It was how I was able to kind of go through these things. And so the idea of Everett being a career was not anything in there. The only thing I could have been, in my brain, was a teacher. Because there's no way I could have been one of the big artists showing at some New York gallery. That was just such a small percentage out there. And so when I graduated grad school, uh, I would do 2 or 3 shows a year. Whoever could give me a couple $100 so I could do some big installation work. But mostly I was doing home renovation, and I was doing historical wood window restoration.
Oh, okay.
And that was my career. So I kind of ran my own business for 10 plus years. Uh, Stayed in Pennsylvania in the Pittsburgh area. So I had gotten married and had kids, and my wife's family is from this area. So we ended up kind of just making home here. And, you know, lead paint and dust is not kind to the lungs. And I also have a issue with my immunity where I can't fight off pneumonia.
Oh, wow.
So I've had it about 15 times in my life.
Wow.
So that combined with doing renovation and restoration because I was too cool to use a mask, um, it killed my lungs. And so I would do a window job, and after that, I'd spend the week in the hospital recouping,
Oh, jeez.
um, because my oxygen intake was so bad. And then I'd get out of the house. Didn't have insurance, so I was relying on the meds that they gave me. I was parceling it out, being like, well, I can kind of breathe today, so I can wait on using these for a couple more weeks. And then I would have another job, and it would take a month to do it, and I'd end up in the hospital again. And I ended up in the hospital 2016, the day of Christmas. We actually came from my in-laws celebration. I had to leave early because I had to go to the ER because I could not breathe. And I was admitted, and there was that was on constant breathing treatments. They just could not get me back to a baseline. So about a half a week, they finally got me kind of chilled out a little bit, but of realizing that was the big day of realizing that I could not go back to that because I would not be living after a couple more years of having to go through that. And it had just done permanent damage to my lungs. So my baseline was nowhere near what it had been before. And it was funny because I hadn't painted in probably 20 years since then,
Oh,
since undergrad. So I hadn't painted since like maybe 1999 was the last time I painted really like a painting. And out of awful whim, I had asked my mother-in-law for a little traveling watercolor kit. This is little, some $20 Amazon Winsor Newton knockoff kind of things. Just because I just wanted to have it. Because I used to love looking at people's arts, like when they had uh, sketchbooks and they had samples and they had like a pencil drawing with a little bit of watercolor splash. And I was like, oh yeah, I just want that in my kind of quiver of art material. And I thought to bring it with me when I went to the hospital, and all I had was like a lined notebook and a sketchbook, and I just started painting flies because I also hadn't fished for probably 20 years either. And for some reason, the only thing I could think of was in the river with my dad when I was like 6 or 7, when nothing was wrong. You know, there was a peace in it. There was a serenity. Meditation,
yeah.
whatever you may want to call that escape. And it became my hyperfixation was just painting flies and thinking of that era, and it was giving me some kind of sense of peace in my brain. It was funny because a couple of months beforehand, I started watching fly tying videos again. I think for the same reason, is I wanted something in the background when I slept, and so I found this guy I really liked, and he would just be kind of on in the background as I went to bed. And he ended up being Tim Camisa, which is a guy from our area,
Yeah.
fly tire extraordinaire back in the day. And I sent him a message saying like, "Hey, I love your work, and it's really kind of made me want to get reinvested in this world just because it's given me some kind of serenity and meditation, or whatever." And so we just got chatting, and I was starting to mess around with art again in the more traditional sense, and it's like, hey, like I'm just gonna shoot you and shoot you a quick logo just because I want to do it, and I really do appreciate kind of you being this anchor for my brain at night. And he was offering all these things. It's like, oh yeah, hey, we could do this. I was like, I just want to do it. And so I did it, not thinking it was gonna be anything. And he was head over heels on it. It became his logo. He still uses it to this day. And he's like, every time I talk to him now, he's like, I still owe you a fishing trip and a hamburger. I was like, I know. But and I was like, oh, that is just so weird. And I posted a couple of my flies I had done on Instagram, and I did not have a fly fishing following. I was basically pictures of me and my kids or my wife at the art museum or something, and people started to react to them. And the more I did, the more people would interact, and same thing with other social media stuff. And about 6 months later, I think Echo had reached out to me about doing some design, and it just kind of took off from there. And within the year, it replaced about 3/4 of my income from the renovation stuff. And then within a year and a half, I was able to live off of it. We moved. We had to downgrade everything in life just because it was definitely not the same as having a renovation company, but um, it was so much better than me being in the hospital all the time. And I am not the kind of person that could just be like a an owner and just point other people to do stuff. So that was never a fit for me. So I just started doing more art, and it just kind of happened. And we live very simply, extremely simply. uh, but it's so much better than you know spending a month of your year in the hospital and everyone worrying about you.
Oh, heck yeah. And I get the living simply part. I mean, if somebody looked at first glance, they would probably think that it was a little more than what it really is for us. But we do that on purpose because we don't want to be, we don't want to be in a corner and have the world explode on us and have no idea what to do. And so it's even though adversity brought you to that place, it's not a terrible place to be. I mean, there's people that are stretched so far because of their choices, not because of things they can't control, that sometimes it's just ludicrous. Like I think back to of all the, like, I joke with people. I'm like, we had the Disney Channel growing up when my parents could afford it. So it was never something consistent. It was, up and down. So I'd be talking, about a show or something. I remember like Flipper or something. And, it hadn't been on in years, but it's been years since I had that channel to watch it. And, that was those times where my parents stretched, and it's always kind of funny to think a little bit about that. So here's something I'm hearing, which I want everybody, and correct me if I'm wrong. So this is something kind of cool. I think I'm hearing you tell me about your artwork. So a lot of the flies, if not all of them, the flies and the fish and all of these things were actually, so I have, the caddis, the nymph, the merger, and the dry on my wall. And so when I look at that next, what I'm looking at is Ryan Keene's memory, not just a piece of artwork that you decided to do to make a couple bucks off of.
Yeah, I mean, they are contemporary pies, but I think the action of me deciding to do that is definitely embroiled in memory. I think, because I was tying flies with my dad, but it was, 1982, 83, and 84 where, there was there was barely any barbell eyes. There wasn't any of these, synthetics, and there wasn't all these kind of updated, even hook design. It's like,
oh yeah.
So it's funny because I would go to, my dad would come to some of the fly fishing shows with me, and he would always be amazed at how advanced and everything was, how kind of high tech everything was, and because we were simple, I was fishing, an old Martin tuna can, and he had splurged and got his, a Hardy reel, but it was simple. We didn't take photos. It was all about just living. And so he was just so interested in this kind of all these, how we still think of it as a small industry, but how much it had exploded comparatively to what it was then, when there was maybe 2 magazines, and every shop was a mom and pop shop, and some grandfather who had, feathers that he had shot down himself in cigar boxes or model car boxes. And so it's really interesting seeing it through his eyes. And sometimes it's funny seeing it through his eyes, through other people's eyes, because he'll just start talking about like, oh, we always carried a thing of bacon grease in a little tin because there's nothing like just throwing those little brooks out in a frying pan and seeing some of the catch and release guys kind of like, oh, it was like that's what it was. It was we brought a bag of gorp and that was it, and maybe some pancake mix. But if we didn't catch anything, we were eating gorp. We were eating trail mix, and that was how we did. And that's what fishing was for us. It wasn't a vanity thing as far as like the biggest thing you could catch. It changed a little bit to me when I went into more lure stuff in high school and started doing a lot more like bass fishing and things like that. There was this kind of we got away from kind of the catch and release things, and it was more of like how big is something we could get. But something so simple about how we approached it when we were kids. There was something much more poetic about it. There was something kind of just so poetic is the word.
Oh, absolutely.
When I think of those things, it's more about folklore than when I went fishing with my dad. It was I don't know. He was a super hippie too, so all of he had the super floppy hat and the pipe hanging out of his mouth, and my mom made his fishing vest, and it's that's how it was for us, and so when I do art, that is what I'm thinking about. It may be contemporary things, it may be fish that we didn't even know existed when I was a kid, especially like a lot of the southern water stuff and saltwater stuff, and but the action of it. And anytime I think of the word fishing, that's where I'm brought back to. I'm brought back to that time where I kind of created this ball of memory that I visit multiple times a day. And it's, that finding that kind of quietness in a very insane life. So that's what you see when you look at my art, as far as how I look at my art.
No, I love it. I think that's important because I mean, I think there's a lot of different reasons that people purchase and collect and have things. Some people just like the way it looks, but for me, anyways, I love the creativity of artwork. To me, is not what ends up on the canvas. It's the process. It's the mental state. It's what drew you to this. Why in the world did you paint that, of all things, or whatever? Those things interest me because I'm a worldview guy, and those things tell me, that gives me insight into a person's character and their worldview and how they see reality and all of that. Like you said it a number of times now about how that, for lack of better terms, that's your happy place when you go there. And I try to explain that to my clients that, like our motto and our little thing that we do is it's not about the destination, it's the journey that makes us. And we take that seriously because we want people to understand what you have grasped very dearly there, which is it's the moments of who you're with and what you're experiencing, fish or not. Yeah. And all of that, retain that, because when life gets crazy, and it's going to, you can go back to that. And it's not an escape from reality. It's part of reality you're pulling back on. That's how I frame it, because I don't want people to think I'm trying to send them somewhere to escape, like in a bottle of alcohol or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. Right. You're epitomizing kind of what I'm trying to articulate to so many people, and I love it.
No. Yeah. And I tell a lot of people this, and when we used to go to, fly shops in our area, and I'd see all the pictures of, people with their catch, and, all their buddies with, their pictures and these big outings. And I asked my dad, I was like, why don't we take pictures? We do this so often. Why don't we make these memories? And he's like, okay. He's like, close your eyes. It's like, all right. It's like, do you remember when we were in Natty Brook? He's like, which time? But he's like, yes, I am there. He's like, when we first get there and I'm setting up the tent, you're running around because there's all these holes on the banks, and you used to love kind of think of what animals in which hole, and when are you going to see an animal coming out of the hole, and you're running around and you've already figured out which crook in that tree that you're going to set up your little hangout spot in. And you remember the first brook trout we catch and all those jewels on its body and the glistening of the river and the smells of the morning. And I was like, yeah. He's like, there's your picture. That is what it's about. It is about how this means to you and not what it looks like to you. As I said, my dad's a big hippie, and and he was a big reader, and still is. And I think that foundation has really kind of, just that simple act has really steered how I interact with my family, my kids, my wife, my friends. So many times I've told that story to fellow fishermen, and I see that glint in their eye, like, yeah, I do remember those times. I do remember that, and you just see people get lost in it. I'm like, yeah, that's where it is. That's it right there. It's not the photos on your phone. It's that. It's the mark that it leaves. Not the evidence. And it's it is something that I look a lot in every aspect of my life now, and something I have to, so I don't get so lost in the noise. Is remember this. If you can even do it about pain, remember this pain. You know, remember this happiness. Remember this joy. Remember this trauma, because these are the marks that are left on your life, and you can kind of sew them together and find the connections, and that's who you are. And I don't know, that was probably, and I never put weight into it until I got into college and I was reading more and getting into poetry and theory, and I just, like, there was like a big aha moment. Like, oh, because yeah, I haven't fished in so many years, and I close my eyes and I'm right back there because I took that second to make that mark. And I still in that practice of appreciating those moments for that and nothing else.
That's fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that, man.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I think I mean, your dad was on to something there, and I'm grateful that you picked up on it, because it's just too good. I mean, you think about, I've seen a commercial somewhere before where it was for OnStar, and it's hilarious that this is just coming to mind. And the way they tried to market OnStar was they showed an accident in somebody's cell phone, like flying up or going out the window or something. And
Right.
where OnStar was that more reliable thing. And I liken that a little bit to the idea of capturing that memory internally rather than relying on a digital media to provide that later on. And I have tons of photos. I have tons of photos and videos of my family. We all probably do. But we could lose those.
Exactly.
They could vanish, disappear, whatever the case may be. And it's all those other things that really stick and matter. And we should, what I think your dad had taught you, which was, it was a practice to capture those things, to allow them to imprint on you. And I'm stuck on that. I apologize to, but I love it. So before I end up spending an hour just pondering that, so you go through this stage of realizing you got to take care of yourself a little bit more. So you had to transition, interesting enough, back into painting. How has that affected your future and your kind of current state and stuff? Is it thriving for you? Are there things that you could have done differently, you could be doing? I mean, how and more so, like, kind of intrigued by it, but also maybe there's another person that is an artist. I have a good friend. Actually, he is a huge fan of your work. And we were talking, I didn't know it. And he pulls out his little book and starts showing me all these watercolors and stuff like that. And your name was the first one that comes up. He goes, "Yeah, I know." So I
have those books too. That's okay.
So this is for you too, Mickey. So you can get to know Ryan a little bit better from all this. But like maybe there's an inspiring artist out there. What kind of advice from your own experience this far could you maybe pass on to them?
As far as art goes, I think the biggest thing I've learned is to not reject anything. I may be doing something the furthest from duct taping a banana to the wall, but I think that's important too. Most of my regrets is, like I said before, was not allowing myself to find the value of these world famous realist painters that I was rolling my eyes about at school. And because it just wasn't what I was into. But I look at my work today and I see all of the influences throughout my life. I see the realists. I see the abstract people. I see the contemporary art. I see the more kind of like abstract thought ideas or postmodernist theories and all those things. So it's all there. But I also see it as a way of looking at life where don't reject anything, accept all of the realities. And because I think every point of view has some weight. Even if it's something that you're sitting here, crossing your arms and shaking your head, that it's just not something that is right or proper or whatnot. It has a value in this world. It has value to that person. And I think addressing that its value or importance to somebody else, it ends up going somewhere in that library in your brain. And someday it may pop up some way, some way or fashion. It pops up and you already have that being like, yeah, I remember when I gave that idea space or that thought space or that person space or that art space, and it deserved that space. And so I feel like being an artist is a sponge to society. And we just collect. We collect everything. We collect art. We collect everything. And I think some of the greatest artists in this world are people that didn't stop collecting or decide they were done or decide it was something that they didn't find interesting or disagreed about. They collected it anyway. You see some of the most famous artists in the world, you look at their studios, you're like, oh, good Lord. They were hoarders. But we collect. We can't get enough of the world. We can't get enough of that input. And I think getting into the habit of not rejecting and just understanding that everything in this world has place and deserves place. It's a pretty big thing for me. I will never look at an art and roll my eyes at it. I'll never look at an art and be like, another one of those. Same with a person, I may have a lot of disagreements with somebody, but I'll never reject that they have space in this world.
Yeah.
And I'm an empath to a fault. Like, I will feel bad about the dead raccoon on the side of the road because the hands looked like it was pleading or something. Like, I will go down wormholes of emotional turmoil on seeing a disappointed kid in the store, like I absorb those emotions. And I think the act of rejection creates those negative emotions, and my brain just can't handle it. And so I feel like just kind of opening my arms to anything and everything. And it's also something I can learn from my dad, because that guy can strike up a conversation with, it doesn't matter who he's talking to. He could be an avid, messenger pigeon breeder, and somehow you'd figure out how to have a 5-hour conversation with them. Much to the chagrin of like the waiter, or like, yes, I know you want to know my life story, but I don't know. I go off on crazy tangents when these things come up, but I think it's important. I think it's real important to just keep those the life open to everything. And I mean, it's made me who I am today. And of all the things I'm disappointed in, that's not one of them. Is that part of my personality and of my life. And my kids do that. My wife does that. And so just I guess keeping an open mind and open heart is my number one advice for anybody in this world.
Yeah, artist or not, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think as an artist, we become that kind of raw nerve of society, and it's kind of some of our jobs to weave in these narratives of those snapshots of time, But yeah, I mean, I think in just general, be nice. My hippie father coming out again. But,
well, I think it's funny because obviously through history and certain people's experience, that word hippie has become a little pejorative. But I don't see it that way all the time. I've grown up around enough folks that would probably fit that stereotype, but it's always interesting because it's really important. It's kind of like I think about how I've described books to my son, is that like we don't restrict the books that he can read. They're his choice. Now there's some stuff I think doesn't need to be on a paper for ages, but we've talked about a lot of heavy stuff a lot younger than most people would ever. They think I was crazy to talk about certain things with my kiddo. But one of the things, the way we've described books is, there's a lot of logical things that books do for you. They help you understand arguments and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things, a couple things that they do that's kind of in line with that, what you're describing, is it allows you to walk in somebody's shoes, to see the world as they do. And just because you disagree with something a person thinks or believes doesn't mean that something they have to say couldn't possibly be true and rewarding and important and impactful. And that's separating. Like we try to, even though the ideas are coming from the person, we don't want to judge the person wholly by the ideas. The ideas can be a separate thing, because a person, like you said, they have their space, their existence in this world. I think, thinking back, I think it was Lewis said that you'll never stare another person in the eyes that doesn't have eternity there. And that's one of those things that hits me hard, because we're all, I forget where he says, I heard it, but that kind of old adage, like we're all in this together at some level. And it's important to, even going as crazy as thinking that our forefathers, why they wrote the idea of freedom of speech. We can't understand, we'll never know if we're wrong if we don't hear a different opinion when it's counter to us. And that's just like something modern day that we can extrapolate what you're saying too, for all of us to kind of get. And I appreciate that. I don't think that, you say hippie. I don't see the dirty guy, whether he was or not. I do, but I also don't think that's bad. Oh, shoot.
Sometimes the dirtier the better as far as what they have to offer somebody when they open their mouths. It's
Oh,
I grew up in the punk and hardcore scene in Boston, and
that was a big scene in Boston. I remember.
yes, some of the most amazing and kind of like influential people were the people that were swallowed up by the city. There was this one homeless gentleman in Cambridge at one of the train stops right before one of the churches that we used to go to shows to all the time. And for $1, he would stand there and recite Lord Byron poems from memory.
Oh, wow.
And there is nothing I've experienced that made me get lost in all of these kind of wonderments about this person's life, and not like how they end up like this, but the beneficial lines in their life that led them to this knowledge. Some of the most amazing people and minds I met were sitting in the gutter sometimes because they had a whole different point of view of life. And we used to feed the homeless at shows. We used to do things that like Food Not Bombs and things where it was just all about feeding people and having good conversations. And sometimes we get arrested for it for feeding homeless.
Oh, gosh.
But like, I think those experiences really express that teaching of you don't not listen. Because man, that dude reciting those Lord Byrons, I have forgotten a lot of things in my life. And those little 10-20 minute things are so solidly there. There's parts of me like that will probably be the last thing you lose in your memory wise, or some of those kind of experiences. But yeah, it's those little tiny things that really support that idea of just listen, open your eyes, look, learn, never stop learning. Good Lord, don't stop learning. Because everything that I can sit here and just get lost in memories are all those events, whether it be my dad's, stories or made up bedtime stories, or about the pictures and God, all those little things that were so casual back then, just so happenstance. It's not thing we searched out or looked for, but 10 years later, you realize how life changing they were. And I find myself thinking about that dude reciting Lord Byron poems in a beat up house coat. He's just a really, really amazing dude. But again, I go off on crazy tangents, and I apologize if I am.
Nope.
I am all over the place.
You're in good company.
Yeah. I did a couple of like written interviews sometimes, and I'm like, oh my god, that was like 5,000 words. And it was like, what medium do you use? Like 3 pages later, I'm like, oh, watercolor. I don't know. I think as I go on this life and I have kids, some of those things I get to be more and more important in my brain. And no matter how much more I absorb, it's always those things that like, God, I just need to be able to know the words to be able to truly describe what this means in this universe. As much as it means to me, but someone's like, okay, like great, yeah, Lord Byron's cool, but it's if you saw my studio in my bookshelves, it is pretty haphazard as well. So it's never stop absorbing.
Let me ask you a couple questions about like the fishing itself.
Yep.
So I know it's been a while because you and I chatted not extensively, but a little bit a year or so ago through Facebook, I think. Um,
Mhm.
when was the last time? And I know that there's busy and there's hectic and things of that sort, and your commitment to your family that
Yeah.
prevents it. I get all that for sure. So when was the last time you were able to pick a rod up?
Let's see, 3 years ago.
How many?
3.
Oh, okay, okay. Now,
Um, but I mean, this was the last time I threw a fly on the water was 3 years ago.
okay.
My buddy from here, Chris, this was right off of the kind of the pandemic, and just we hadn't seen each other for a while, and he's like, I'm going down to there's like this little man-made pond in Pittsburgh, and it's stocked with little fish. It's got crazy huge carp, but they don't want you fishing for that. But it's literally like finding the smallest fly in your box and maybe hooking on some sunfish kind of thing. It's nothing like, there's no surprises. But we threw a couple of lines out and just hanging out and talking. And another one of his friends came, and we were just standing, and it's a big place where people are having barbecues, and there's a pool there and people playing tennis. And this isn't, we're going fishing. This was just a couple of friends hanging out, looking for a reason to wave your fly rod around. And, as soon as you do that, 1,000, city kids will come and ask what you're doing, and what's that, what's this, and can I try that? And so most of the time it's giving tours of all your cool stuff to these kids who don't know anything beyond a bobber. And so that was fun. I think the last time I fished was probably, I think 2019. I went out to Volant by myself, and out to the Slippery Rock Creek, and spent the day there. Uh, that was beautiful. That was the first time I went in that area, uh, and that was nice. It felt back in the day. There was
Right.
just nobody around. I walked, about a mile away from, the fly shop, and uh, but I think that was the last kind of like what you would call like a fly fishing experience. Uh, my wife got real sick in 2020, and so I don't go 20 minutes away from home if someone's not here, and I'm a pretty much a caregiver, so that chance is kind of not really a reality to us right now. Um, but I got all my fly tying stuff out, so I do. I need to. I need to. I'm finding myself needing to activate that escape again, or that connection again. Uh, I need to rehash or put some energy back into some memories, so they're a little bit more fresh in my brain. Um, so I'll find my connection that way. There's 100 people here that want to go fishing with me, but everyone wants to get me out. Especially Tim Camisa is still asking me anytime he asks for something about that about that logo, and he changes. He's like, I gotta get you out of here. Like, I know, it's been 10 years, but a lot of what I want to do, if we're ever finding some stability for her and ability to travel, a lot of my big huge wishes, and hers as well, is getting out and traveling and being able to connect with all these people that have changed our lives. This community that has, I mean, as far as my lungs, it saved my life. Having this kind of um, industry to get wrapped up into, and now with her sick, there's no way I could work a 9 to 5 anywhere. I couldn't be away from the house that much, and so I am really lucky that there's this option,
Heck yeah.
because I don't know what I would do if I wasn't being employed this way. Like I can't even be somewhere for 4 or 5 hours and get into like a stay at home data processing job because I'm always having to help her with things. And so I am, if there's any kind of balance in this universe, whatever you want to call it, that has been something that I have not been ignorant enough to uh, kind of not have in my uh, I lost my words here. uh, there's something that led me this way, uh, and yeah, I couldn't be more appreciative of it.
Oh, I can see it. It shows in your artwork. It shows in when you write and release some things out there for the rest of us to read and to hear. It shows
Yeah.
in your commitment to your family, to your wife. I mean, those are huge. And you're right. I mean, what an amazing position to be in, to be able to,
Oh yeah,
to be able to do what you do. No matter, and that is not me reducing the level of struggle that you guys fight every day. What would make it possible to do a little more travel with your wife? Is there a way to make a mobile situation for her to get out a little bit more? This isn't me trying to find a way for you to fish. This is a genuine question.
You're worse than Tim. Like, can I cheer your wife so we can go fishing?
No.
If you got it, man.
Because
I will fish with you every day. It's hard. She's also she can't have solid foods,
okay.
and so and she has a thing with this. One aspect of her illness is called MCAS, which means she reacts to everything, to an allergenic kind of way. Like when she goes to a doctor's office, they have to give her an EpiPen and rescue Benadryl just because people are wearing perfume.
Interesting. Okay.
It's very hard for her to even get up the amount of energy to go to a doctor because she know it'll take her a month and a half just to recover from going to the doctor. Um, we had a procedure this last December that we were really hoping was going to be that answer of getting her more stable so she can get out, because we haven't gone for a walk or hung out outside that we used to do 4 times out of the week in 5 years. Um, she doesn't leave the house unless it's for a medical thing, because generally she reacts to city air. uh, so we have air purifiers and she has respirators, all that stuff. And it's just hard. It's hard to find medicine because she can't take it because of the materials they mix the medicines with, the excipients. She reacts to almost everyone, so she hasn't had pain relief in 5 years because Tylenol has to be compounded and costs us $200-$300 a dose, not dose, but a refill.
Yeah.
And so like there are those pipe dreams that we have that she can get stable enough that they'll finally give her a port so she can have fluids instead of trying to drink enough Pedialyte in a day just to keep her heart rate okay. And we would love to just have, like, you know, super hypoallergenic RV that we can just live off of and drive around. But that's what it would take, because we can't go out. She can't use a public bathroom because of the cleaning materials and the urinal tabs or the porta potty chemicals or all that stuff. All those things that we just kind of take advantage of that we don't think of as part of what we do when we leave the house for more than a couple of hours. Like, if we have to use the bathroom, we just go and use it. But for her, it becomes a whole ordeal, and will probably mean that she has to go home because she'll have a anaphylactic shock. And so it's really hard to think of the idea of, like, what would it take? Because honestly, we don't know. We don't know the journey that will make her better, because we're at a point right now where the doctors are kind of shrugged and like, we're not sure what we can do because everything they want to do is she can't do because she reacts to. She needs to get teeth removed, but she can't because she can't take pain meds. They can't even do like when she has her feeding tube done, they have to do it without pain meds, without numbing solutions or anything. They just got to do that, just raw dog it, and it's it is a lot. And so trying to think of that path is it's hard. We just had a GoFundMe because we're a lot of things that are possibilities are things that her insurance won't cover. There's one specialist in Pittsburgh that does MCS, and they're not covered under her insurance, so it's all out of pocket every cent. And so a lot of the medication compounds are not covered, so that comes out of her pocket, and it's hard for her because beyond just physically hard, but she doesn't want to feel like she's putting all this additional baggage and burden on us.
Oh.
Without knowing that there will be a positive outcome, So that's hard. I don't know. I don't know what the change is. I don't know what's the possibility.
That's okay. It was a real question, and because I know, like, my wife suffers from pretty severe anxiety, and she. And this is not me equating things. It's just why I asked that question. So we had a camper for a while, and she really enjoys, because my son and I still tent camp. I'll do that forever. Well, as long as he can help me get back up off the floor, off the ground. But the camper that we had, I needed to find a way to make that happen more often because of how good it is for her to just be out there by a stream or whatever. And she does fish occasionally with me, but she won't admit that she likes it. But I had this bright idea. I said, let's get rid of the camper. We'll get a Sprinter van, and I'll spend, a year, 8 months just selling stuff and doing extra things and finding things for free. And I'm going to create in that thing a space, although it's a lot smaller, that will allow us to do those kinds of things a lot more often, so that it will help her find what you were really describing, where you made your memories. Because it's the only thing I know. I mean, she's talking through things, she does therapy and all this, but I see how good it is for her. And, I'm grateful that we can be in a situation to have that as a possibility. So I wasn't asking, to pry necessarily. It was really, because hell, I'd finish the thing and tell you take it, but take it for a spin.
It's an end game for us of having that ability. Like you, like her, she's not a fisherman, but she was just like me when she was a kid, which is outdoors 24/7, and that's what we did together when we had alone time. Is always outdoors, always walking. We loved moraine, and we loved McConnell's Mills, and we loved getting lost in forests, and so that was our thing too. So that is like the big push as far as putting all this effort into healing, is that someday we will have that again. Especially since most of your life, kids are now getting older. One's out of college and one's sophomore right now. So like, no one needs us on that level anymore. So it's that time when we're supposed to be out there and living selfishly for ourselves. But we hope we get to do that sometime.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your artwork, do you do, because I'm going to wind things up here, otherwise you and I are going to be on here till midnight. That
happens with me all the time. Like, what the hell is he talking about? I don't know. Oddly interesting, though.
I can't stop listening. Do you do? Is it worthwhile? Do you do any more like outdoor shows or anything like that to expose yourself, or is that not really a worthwhile thing for for where you're at?
It's not a possibility right now.
Okay.
I did them a couple of years. I think 2018, maybe 2018, 2019. No, I think the 2018 was the thing. I did two or three of the fly fishing shows. I did the Marlboro Mass one and whatever the Jersey one turned
Oh yeah,
into.
Edison. Yeah, we were just there last
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah, and I did. I was honored to do to be like the highlighted artist at the what is it, the Midwest Fly Show in Michigan. And I did like the pin design for them and everything that year. And so that was kind of like the time where I did a lot. I did a couple of the can't remember what the one out in Cranberry, Pennsylvania was. But I did that a couple of years.
Oh, the Cabin Fever show, the Trout Unlimited.
Yeah,
puts on. Yeah.
yeah. And so I really enjoyed them. I mean, I always came out ahead, but it was more of, like I mentioned before, like seeing people, talking to people, putting names to faces, and storytelling, obviously. And I missed. That was the biggest part I miss about those shows. It was never the make it or break it kind of financial things, but I loved talking to people and meeting and just connecting in that way. And it was like 8, 9 years later, every time someone was like, "Hey, first time reaching out, but I met you in Marlboro," and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, and again, memories. Bringing up those conversations. Uh, I love that. I miss. That's the thing I miss. I also have horrible, horrible social anxiety when it's face to face, and but I always found those to be pretty easy to navigate because everyone just had something in common, and someone had, I guess, that moment in life where there was something kind of like a balance happened, and so you'd always have something to talk about. uh, we always could, bring up old stories or whatever, and especially when it was like in Marlboro, back in my kind of stomping grounds and stuff. It was, it's fun talking about, local stuff like that. But I miss them because of that. I don't miss the hustle and bustle of it. I do not miss the move-ins and move-outs. That was the one nice thing about the Midwest Fly Show, is that they pretty much did everything for you. They fed you. It was great. It was awesome. It was fantastic. They brought all your stuff to your spot, and I was like, that was my first experience with the show too.
Oh, geez.
So I just assumed that everything was like. I got a little spoiled with that, but I do miss talking to people, and I don't do that very often. I have become a pretty big hermit in the last 5 years with my wife's illness. So, and we can't bring illnesses into the house, so we generally don't have guests. And when I'm out in the open, I'm like, hazmated up. I can't afford to bring a cold into this place. And so it's the whole idea of outside and people in the world is a little different feeling to me these days than before, as far as casual hugs, handshakes, and 3-hour conversations.
Well, yeah. I appreciate you at least lending your voice out today, because, man, I've had a fantastic time getting to know you and your world just a little bit more. Yeah, I appreciate your vulnerability. That's important. Oh, yeah. I think that's important for everybody to learn to be more vulnerable. We just don't always know, and we can learn an awful lot, because I know I have just in the last hour.
I appreciate it.
Oh, man. Well, give us a couple places that we can find you. I'll make sure that all of that is involved in all of this, and people can get there through links. But let us know how we can find you and your artwork.
Yeah, I am online mostly on Instagram and Facebook, both. I think Instagram is Rack Art underline PGH, but I'll have the links for you. And then Facebook, Rack Art Flies, and that's RAKART. And my email is rakoart@gmail.com. And that's for, if you have any special requests or you want me to write you a 30-page email back or something. But yeah, so those are pretty much where I'm at. I have a website as well. It's rackart.net, and that's where my store is. But I think generally Instagram is the one that I keep updated the most. All right, brother. Thanks so much.
You too, man. Have a good night. Wow. My word. What a great conversation. Friends, find Ryan's work. Buy Ryan's work. Seeing the depth of what goes into what he places. Kind of Ryan, I hate to use the word channeling, but it is a bit of that to describe it, who he is in his artwork. And many artists do this. And I want to say thank you to the entire fly fishing community that has helped people like Ryan and Andrea and all these amazing artists. It really is an amazing culture to be part of. If you can't thrive in it, it's because you're hanging around the jerks and there's not many of them. Ryan, thank you for sharing all that. And I want to leave everybody with this because I kept thinking about this quote when Ryan was talking about his childhood and his memories and the things that he thinks about. This comes from C.S. Lewis. To be concerned about being grown up, to admire the grown up because it is grown up, to blush at the suspicion of being childish. These things are the marks of childhood and adolescence. But to carry on into middle life or even into early manhood, this concern about being grown up is a mark of really arrested development. When I was 10, I read fairy tales in secret and would have been ashamed if I had been found doing so. Now that I'm 50, I read them openly. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up. Friends, a lot to learn from this conversation. Thank you. Remember, it isn't about the destination, it's the journey that makes us. Till the next time, God bless.